Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight to the Docker Meetup in Bratislava. And it's a big pleasure for me to welcome Alex Ellis,
Thank
who's
you.
uh, who's also who's leader of lead developer of OpenFaaS project. We're very happy to have him here in Bratislava. He was speaking at PyCon conference, which is organized by the civic association called SPY with a very mysterious name. That means Slovak Python. And big thanks to Progress Bar for hosting this place. It's been a little hacky, like a hackerspace is expected to be, maybe a little bit. So we're in a new space. So if you're watching this online, we moved from Michalska to Dunajska Street, and so please come check it out, and hope you have a good time. Alex, the floor is yours. We're really looking forward to listening what you have to say.
Great. Thank you very much. So tonight's talk is about Derek, who is a bot, and he's a project maintainer and a community manager, and he's come about from the OpenFaaS project. We can tell you a little bit about why you might need an open source bot, what he can do for you, who's using it now, and then there's going to be a small segue into OpenFaaS and serverless, just so you can get a bit of a whole picture of what we're talking about. So that's what Derek looks like. And if you've ever worked on OpenFaaS, we've actually got Stefan here in the audience. He's seen this message a bunch of times. And you forget to read the contribution guide, and you don't sign each of your commits. He'll give you this message, tells you, look, you need to do something. Very sorry. Can you fill that out and submit your work again? But that's what he looks like. Now, Derek, as well as managing GitHub, helps us manage the community and empower the community by allowing them to get more superpowers. So as a regular contributor here, there's certain things that you can do to help us with the project, like managing issues, closing pull requests, that kind of stuff. This allows all of these people from the OpenFaaS community to start contributing in more meaningful ways and to actually get some ownership of the project too. This also is running on Docker's project, where they have around 800 different contributors. And you can imagine the trouble if everybody of those 800 people were able to do whatever they wanted to the code base, right? So Derek is about addressing some of those problems that you get at scale. This is what you see when you want to add a single person to your GitHub community. You want them to be able to help you with the project. The only option you have is to make them root access, like God mode. They can do anything they want. They can delete the code. They can delete the repository, rename it, whatever. If you have an organization, maybe you work for a company, it looks a bit like this. So you've got your admin, which is like a collaborator. And then basically the only other option is to have read-only. So either this God mode or your read-only, and you've got all these people that you want them to start making changes to your repository, to your issues, but you don't want them to necessarily have all of that power at the beginning, right? So these are some of the things that maintainers or the community you guys might want to do on an open source project. You may want to edit issues, edit the title of them. Have you ever seen an issue raised, maybe internally at work, and the description is just completely wrong, right? They'll say this doesn't work at all, and it turns out that they'd been doing it wrong or they'd not read the instructions. Maybe you want to edit the title. Well, this is one of those things where you need root access, write access to be able to do it. Okay? Maintainers respond to common queries with a common answer. So it might be, I've got this error. It says cannot find OpenFaaS, right? It may be that they haven't deployed OpenFaaS. And if there's a clue in the error message, as a maintainer, you might read that and say, oh, well, have you deployed it yet, right? So the other kind of stuff you do is maybe look at your list of issues and say, how could we possibly organize them all? Let's add some labels. You may say which ones are bugs, which ones are enhancements, which ones you're not going to fix. You kind of get the picture. Now, with those labels, you can also triage the work. Triage means prioritize. So it may be that you've actually got something that looks really bad, but in terms of the project, it's not important. So you may triage that low priority. You've got something that if your customer saw it, it could be really embarrassing. You put it top priority, and then when everybody looks at those, they can see where to start and how to make an impact. Okay. You may also want to open close issues and even lock a thread. Lock a thread is where people can't comment anymore. And you may think, why would you need that on open source? Isn't it all rainbows and puppies? It's not. Sometimes things go off topic. Sometimes you've got a thread, particularly on the Docker project, that's 5 years old. And people are coming, and really what they should do is open a new issue and get everybody's attention again. Right. So these are the kind of things that collaborators and maintainers want to do, and they can't do unless you give them right access. And this is why I built Derek. Derek allows us to automate all of these things, and it's really easy to use, and that's what I'm going to show you. So the other thing that we started off with was that error message, and that was because the person hadn't followed the contribution guide. With a lot of projects, you need to sign every commit that you make to say that you license it for the project. If you work in a big organization, it may be that they don't even allow you to contribute to open source unless you have internal approval. And so there's all sorts of complications here. Again, it's not all just nice, easy journey. There are things that you have to think about. So developer sign-off says, I agree that I own the code. I agree that I give you the contribution. I agree that you can license it under the project. OpenFaaS uses it. I first saw it on the Docker project about 3 years ago. The Linux kernel uses this, so it's got to be good. And the other alternative you get is a CLA, which is an agreement between you and the project. I'm going to show you a demo of how that works. Stefan at the back will shortly raise a pull request with this live demo, and we'll see what Derek makes of it. So what would be better than root? It'd probably be fine-grained permissions. And you can see up here, we've got read access to code, read access to metadata, read and write to issues and pull requests. So just by adding those 3 OAuth permissions, you do all of those things we wanted to do and forget about people deleting the code base or transferring it to another organization. Again, when you install Derek, if you have an organization at work, you can pick the repositories you want to be enrolled in it. It may be just 1 or 2. You can say just apply it across the board. And because it's a GitHub app, rather than something that you have to run on your own server, then that's literally all you do. Open this up, install Derek on the repos you want, and he'll start working immediately. So I've written up a sequence diagram. If any of you ever touched Java at university, you had to write UML. It might be familiar. It doesn't quite fit on the wall. But over on this side, we've got the GitHub icon, and there's a pull request coming in. You see that line is JSON. Now that JSON body will say what the repository it came out of was, who raised it. It will also be signed in a way where you have a secret and GitHub has a secret. And if you re-sign that package, you can verify that it actually came from them. Right? Because you don't want somebody finding your Derek and just doing whatever. So that's called HMAC. And there's a piece of authorization code that will authorize Derek and check that he's all good. We've then got some code for pull requests. And what will happen is he will go back to the GitHub repository and look for a derek.yaml file. So if you've ever seen a Travis YAML file or a Docker file in the root, he reads that, and then he will get the labels for the pull request, check that it's OK. If it needs to have a label applied, it will then call apply label, and that's the end of that transaction. Right. Similar thing happens for a comment. If you said to Derek, I need to add a comment, he'll go through the same sort of process. He'll check the message is good. If it's good, he'll carry on. If it's not good, he'll reject it. He'll pick up the YAML file. He'll see, are you authorized to add labels? He'll also check whether you asked to have labels as one of the features, and then he'll add it. Make sense? Yeah? So we'll do a live demo now of the pull request checking. Remember that DCO, developer sign-off, is very important for projects. don't want legal problems down the road, right? So Stefan is now going to raise a pull request. Let me open the UI. Is it FaaS? FaaS CLI. So this is one of our projects. We've got 13 pull requests. Let's see if we can get 14. Okay. Should we merge it? What do you think? Someone said no. Why? Let's see what happened. So first of all, there's no description here. It's not been tested. But putting that aside, it looks like Derek is saying, I've checked your contribution. You haven't signed it off. Can you read the contribution guide? And if we look at the commit, we can see from the message, there's nothing there that says it's signed off. So that's now got a label that's effectively blocking me from merging it or just helping me know. Even you guys knew that we shouldn't merge it. If Stefan was to edit that now and push it again, signed, it would take the label off, and then we're good to go. Okay. Do you want to try and add a label to one of the things on the FaaS repo? Yes, so I think Jan was asking, how do you manage? Yeah, so if we were to sign off a commit, it will have this message at the top, signed off by, that's pulled out of the commit, and then in the status page, just here. Okay. Do you see that text? It's the email address. So if you had a terminal open, yeah, exactly. So if we had a
Can you repeat every time question because of streaming?
Okay.
It's not there, you know.
So if we were to re-sign that and push it up again, Jan, that would take the label off and we'll be all good. So if I just have an empty Git repository here and I add a file and then do a commit, if I put -s and then my message that I want, when we look at the got to do a git config. Hang on. This is a temporary one that I've put in my repository. Let's see if I can do a commit. Okay. We look at the git log. We see this line is present on every commit signed off by. So then when you go back through these over time, you can see where they came from. You can verify the origin. Okay. The developer sign off a certificate of origin is a piece of text about that long. It's not very long. It's in the contribution guide. There's a number of bullets, and it just tells you what you need to do, what you're accepting. Is there a fingerprint? The fingerprint is the SHA that you've committed. So for this certificate, you don't have a GPG key to sign it off. That confuses some people, thinking, is this about cryptography? It's just saying, me, Alex Ellis, at gmail.com, I have agreed that this is my contribution, you can have it. And if you're relatively sure that's a real person, you merge it, that's good enough. So we were going to look at a label real quick. So I raised an issue a few days ago, this one, and it probably could do with a label adding to it because it's an enhancement. And we talked earlier about triaging the issues. So I'm going to go Derek add label, enhancement. And when I click comment, remember that sequence diagram I showed you, he'll go off, he'll pull the Derek YAML file, he'll see is Alex Ellis in the list, and then he'll apply that label. If we look up top, well, actually, it's already done it. Just there. So we can see Derek bot added the label enhancement. And anybody in OpenFaaS who's got their name in the file can do that. The great thing is that if, like, let's say Jan wanted to start helping us, he could do the pull request to the Derek file himself, and then I just click merge and that's it, and now he can do it. So there's none of this, let's redeploy the application, let's push it to Git, let's reboot the server, none of that. It's all live, ready to go. So that's a demo of Derek and how he works. So to summarize that, the reason that he exists is to empower your community, help everybody get involved without taking risks. We're trying to enforce processes that make sense for your project. Now, the developer sign-off might not make sense. You don't need to have it. You can just have the labels if you want, which is also useful. And because it's an open source project, it's value simplicity. There are other tools like it. This is the only one I know of that is hosted by another project, and you can just opt in when you want. You just install something in GitHub, and that's it. You can use it. Contributions are welcome. There's about 5 people that have written most of Derek, and it's been great to see people from the community come and take ownership of that. So in OpenFaaS, they wanted some more features. They were getting frustrated, and they said, right, we need to be able to edit titles. They added it to Derek. I redeployed it, and then they had upgraded access. There's kind of a great symbiosis there. Now, you can either run this completely on your own hardware, on your own computer, or you can use our one. So there's two options there. So OpenFaaS is using this. This is where it came from. Puppet are looking to use it very soon for the automatic labeling. And then the Moby project, which is Docker's main code base, they're using this. They have a group of Docker captains, around 80. Most of them are Meetup organizers like Jan, and they would be really scared of having write access to the Docker main repository. Can you imagine that? What if you slipped? So Derek helps them out, and it means that they can do all of those things I showed you without any risk. And if you decided, okay, well, look, maybe they should be able to merge pull requests, we could potentially add that to Derek and then have people opt in when they want it. And so it's a great way of delegating off the permissions. GitHub have allowed us to specify very fine-grained permissions for integrations, but not for people, which is where we probably need them the most. So this is a great way of standing in the gap and providing that. Make sense? Okay. And Subsurface is Linus Torvalds' diving app, and they've started using this too. And so that's kind of cool. So the next thing for Derek is I want you guys and the wider community to help us keep building it, because this is something for everybody to use. That means helping us with automatic labeling. So if an issue comes in and the title has a question mark, maybe we can apply a label question. It would be great to be able to get some of these notifications through to your Slack community so that you've got a new prompt to go and do something. And then that template that Stefan didn't fill out for me, well, what if somebody actually deleted the whole text in the description? How annoying would that be? I bet that never happens every week, right? Somebody does that. If Derek could step in and say, hang on a second, can you just fill this out? It would save me having to do it however many times per week, per year, per 5 years, and it can help you guys as well with your projects, right? So if you want to get Derek, you want to look at the code, fork it, Alex Ellis/Derek. It's also going to be available on Twitter. Love you to go and have a look at it, see what you think, right? So we'll have a small intermission while I get a drink of water, and then we'll talk a bit about OpenFaaS from 10,000 feet. Right. And any questions you've got now, yeah.
You have to instruct Derek somehow, then you have to read a comment. The history clutter test?
No, so it's through comments. Comment. Type in. If you want to interact with him, you know the one where I typed in add label proposal? That is like a chat message, and then it's like the history of the comments on an issue, tell you what was going on.
And it serves like a transaction.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got a full log. You've got like an audit of what's gone on. It's funny, when I demoed this for the first time at the end of DockerCon, one of the guys there put like Derek close issue, and he was trying to like make a joke, but he couldn't do it because he wasn't in the file, right? So again, that's kind of interesting because you can see if somebody starts trying to use him, be like, well, do you want to be in the file? You know, because you can be. There's not a lot you can do to harm the project. There's a lot you can do to help it. Yeah, yeah, Jan.
Quick demo. It's very simple to install. Empty repository. What it takes to actually install it.
So if you wanted to install Derek, that's the question. This is what it looks like once it's on your repository. This is on my personal account, and it tells you what he's got access to, which again is read the code, write to issues, and you say what repos should it work on, and you can pick them out of a list. So I've got a few here where I've seen contributions coming in, and so I've just added them into the list. And if I can remember the name of one of the other ones, I can type it in here. As soon as I click that button, if I've got my YAML file for Derek in my repository, then it will just work. Immediately, we'll start getting those webhooks, the JSON files. We'll be checking to see if you're actually in the list of people who can use it, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
You need to install some webhook in your repository.
No, you don't need to install any webhooks. Yeah, because it's a GitHub application, it means that as soon as you install the GitHub app, this is kind of a new thing. Not a lot of people are using GitHub apps yet. The webhooks come to you directly without you doing anything. You don't even have to know what server they're going to. Okay. This is what the YAML file looks like. Now, the Docker project wanted us to call these curators. On our project, the label is maintainers. It's the same difference. And we've got all of the GitHub IDs there, and then the features. And if you look at the Moby project, they don't have a developer sign-off because they already have one that they're using. So we just made it a feature flag.
I don't want to use it on, but for example, Bitbucket.
Yeah, so for Bitbucket, I would imagine you could customize it and have the webhooks coming to it, but you should probably host it yourself. Atlassian do have some integrations, so it may be that you can do something similar. Right. Okay. All right. You got any other questions? Save them up, and we'll come back to them after this bit on OpenFaaS. So I wanted to talk about serverless because that's what's really drawn me to Bratislava for the first time today. And I want to talk about serverless with OpenFaaS because that's a project that started a year ago. Now, it's since the beginning had 10,000 stars on GitHub. It's won a BOSI award from InfoWorld. We've got around 81 contributors and almost 2,000 commits. It's a project that's gaining a lot of traction, and it's really an exciting way of just writing serverless functions that are very simple that you can deploy and more or less forget about them. So the best way to look at serverless is to think about architecture and where we've come from. We used to build these monolithic systems, really big ones. They did far too many things. They were very large, they're very slow to deploy to production. Testing them was very difficult. And we broke them down into microservices using tools like Node.js and Express, Django. Yes, I'm seeing some nodding here. But actually, microservices are pretty hard to manage because they're all slightly different. They all listen on a different port. Maybe they're using different software. If you use Docker, does anybody use Docker here? Just one person? Who's used Docker? Yes, everybody. So if you use Docker, you now have to write a Docker file for every microservice. You've got to copy it, maintain it. There's a big burden on you. And then if you want to collect statistics, you've probably got to add that to every one of them as well. So there was a lot of pros, but there were also some challenges. With functions, we get that next step in the architectural evolution. Now we're focusing on writing small, reusable, single-purpose pieces of code we can join together with each other and other functions to build new functionality. Once you deploy your function, they all look kind of the same. And we can use patterns like abstracting the Docker file away from you, making them all look the same, making them just do request response. And so they can become even easier to manage. So I really want you to think about serverless as an evolution, and that they don't replace this monolith or microservice. They actually work really well alongside it. You may have an event. I saw the door here can open through a web page. An event may be that somebody tweeted, I need you to open the door, just like with Derek. And then that will run a piece of code for a tiny amount of time, maybe call the open door function, and then the person will come in. And that's an idea, looking at mainly event-driven systems. So OpenFaaS, I mentioned Docker, asked how many of you use Docker. It's cloud native. That means that everything is built to run on the cloud. And if you look up the top, we've got this API gateway. API gateway is written in Go, as is the rest of the project. But you can write your code in whatever language you want. Any request for a function comes in through the gateway. It will then be tracked through Prometheus. That's a statistics and monitoring tool. And then we can use those statistics along with Docker Swarm or Kubernetes clustering software to actually scale your function up or down, or to create alerts based upon what's happening. The function watchdog sits inside every container and abstracts a lot of those things away from you that we talked about earlier, so that you can just focus on writing a handler and forgetting about everything else. Okay? And then Docker is really key here, because while there are other serverless projects, not all of them use Docker. And through many years, maybe the last 5 years of Docker's existence, we've learned that it's important that your code works the same in dev, test, and production. And Docker is the way of doing that. We build something and it's the same everywhere. So you may be wondering, well, how would you write a function? I'll keep this brief. We have a CLI for you, and it will allow you to scaffold your handler, so to generate it, and any requirements you want, you can put in a requirements text file like that. So in this example, we're making a HTTP request, and we've added the requests module for Python. We just call the URL and print out the status code. All you do is FaaS new, the language, it could be Go, C#, and then the name. That will generate the two files, and at which point you can build it and deploy it. That's it. Got a serverless function. Now, because it's a Docker image, it needs to be pushed somewhere. And so you can put it in a Docker hub, you can put it in Key, even something like Harbor from VMware that will scan for vulnerabilities in your image. So if your customers care about compliance, maybe working in the banking sector or payroll, it's really important stuff, and you can get it built in. So there are other languages available as well. It's not just about Python, Go, Java, Node.js, and actually any binary can be made into a function. So image magic is often used to resize pictures. That can become a function, the actual binary. And then whatever bytes you send at it will apply whatever you ask for. You want to resize it, for instance. It's really useful. If you've got a C++ binary that's part of a monolithic system, maybe going back to the banks again, you just make it a function. It will take input through standard in and return it through standard out. It's really, really easy to get up and running. So I want to show you a demo now of deploying OpenFaaS. And what we'll do is log into my remote server. And I just want to show you there's no pods here. There's no containers running. It's empty. And then I'm going to apply the Kubernetes configuration files. That's how long it takes. We'll now have OpenFaaS. Empty cluster to serverless. It's that quick. There's a YAML files, and there's also a Helm chart. If you're really into Kubernetes, you know what both of those are. There's two standard ways of installing applications. And now over in a web browser, I can open up the site and we've got an API gateway built in. So from here, I can deploy a function from the function store, and these are all made by the community. So Figlet is quite fun for a demo. This will give us an ASCII art. At the top, you've got that Docker image. Remember how important that is? How many times it's been run, the invocation count, and then the request body. So where are we, Jan? What building? No, what is this? What bar? Progress bar. Let's see what we get. How's that? You see that? So request body, response, and comes in the bottom. We can hit it as many times as we want. You want to see something a bit more interesting. There's a function in here that can turn a black and white picture to color using machine learning. So I'm going to deploy that and then find a picture, black and white picture. And by giving it the URL, it will convert it to color and bring it back to us. So there it is. We've got the color picture, and it's done the best job it can because it's machine learning. It's just got a model that's been trained on loads and loads of pictures, and it's been able to change that to color. And we built a bot around it with a couple of 17-year-olds in the UK, and we were able to do this because of the big community and because serverless is so much simpler for a 17-year-old to get started and do something like this than it would have been for me as a 17-year-old writing PHP and running my own LAMP stack, right, with a VPS or something. This is much, much easier for them to build a really complicated application, but fast.
Function is an image, right?
Each function is a Docker image, yeah.
Overhead?
Is it an overhead if each function is a Docker image? Well, it's a good question because Docker works by a layering system, which means that if you have 10 Python functions, everything but that last text file is going to be exactly the same. When you push the first one, 10 megs, it goes up. The next 9, maybe just 10 kilobytes, 20 kilobytes as a delta. So it's really efficient in that way. And that was the end of it. I didn't want to spend too long on OpenFaaS because I know we came here for Derek. But if you want to see some demos after we finish recording, happy to show some other stuff and ask whatever questions you want. All right. Thanks.